Well, welcome back to Rough Restos. I'm Jordan, and this is my M113 Capri. Well, trying to be anyway. So obviously we've got the engine in previous episodes now, mounted, fitted in. A lot of bits mocked up, but we've still got a lot of progress to do. Now, probably the single biggest job left is the wiring. Now, Mercedes engine, wiring. You think it's really complicated? It's actually fairly simplistic, that engine is. But we can't use any of the standard management. Well, we could do, but it'd be a ball ache. We'd have to get all the automatic side of things bypassed, and just, why? There's no need. Might as well go aftermarket. That way, future tuning, adding maybe turbo superchargers, not going to be a problem. So, in this episode, we need to crack on the wiring. I'm kind of looking forward to it, and kind of not. I am an electrician by trade, not that it means much, but I'm also a bit of a nerd. So this is definitely my comfort zone compared to the rest of the build so far, where I've never made engine mounts like before. It's the first time. Wiring, done that a couple of times. And just to be really organised, because we all do it, we all wire stuff in on a cars, get in there, and then a year's time we go, what done what again? I have created a how-to M113 5.0 V8 into a Ford Capri for dummies. This is basically just my wiring pin-out guide and some useful information when it comes to setting up the tune on the engine and that sort of configuring the ECU for it. So I've basically here just got all sorts of useful information like details on the crank and cam sensors, cylinder numbers, firing order, because obviously I need to know all that kind of stuff. I've got details on what the oil pressure should be, so when I configure it, I'll better work out what's going on. Then I started doing up wiring pinout diagrams for my Speeduino UA4C ECU. So basically, I've mapped out what connectors I'm going to be using to plug into my loom, and I've done sort of a pinout of all where I should put the cables to. So when I'm actually wiring this up, I don't have to think about it anymore, do I? It's all here. I've already told myself what I should be doing, and then in the future when I go to look back at it, I can go, oh yeah, it's that connector, pin number 14 is coil number 7B, and I know what's going on. So there's an awful lot of that. There's probably going to be close to about 200 connections to make in the end, quite easily I think. Maybe more than that. Oh joys. But I've got that ECU pin out. Pinouts of the audio ignition amplifiers. So anyway, let's just crack on, see what we've got in a minute. So I've been collecting a nice pile of parts over the last few weeks. There's actually a lot of stuff in there overall to do with the cooling system, various bits and bobs, and wiring. I've had the wiring stuff now for quite a while. But what we got is that's my spare Speeduino, so supplied by DIY-AFI.co.uk, which is James Brandon, really good to deal with. And he sent me out a new one actually, so I got a new one off him, which is again, it's the UA4C, so a 4-channel, fairly capable ECU to be honest, really good for the money. So he sent me out a new one of them, the connectors and that for it, and a ignition driver. I've got another one of them still yet to do. I bought a load of 16-pin connectors off Amazon. Got me a 12-way fuse box and a selection of relays and such, including a big relay. And I got some aluminium and steel to start fabricating. So what I'm aiming to do here is build an ECU box that's hopefully going to fit within about 200 by 400, or not much bigger than that ideally, where we're going to better fit the ECU in. So we've got the fuse box, 2 of these ignition drivers, got to go in there as well. ECU, big relay, 2 small relays, wiring for the lambda sensor controller, 3 lots of 16-pin plugs that go to the engine, a 4-pin plug that goes to the fan, and a 16-pin plug that goes to the body. And this little contraption, which I hope to tidy up, which is actually a custom made like adapter to import my fuel level sender from the tank into the ECU. I reckon it's going to be tight, but nonetheless, I think we should crack on. So I mount this on some kind of aluminium base, I think, and then build a cover which is going to sit over the top of it. That is the aim. Ideally I want the fuses to be sticking out the cover so that you don't have to take the cover off the ECU box to access them. Let's crack on. So this is what I've come up with so far. We've got a little fuse board tray, which is going to sit in underneath the dashboard and have a cover on it as well. So, and the cover will probably just be on a couple like wing nuts and studs, so you can whip the cover off easy if you want to. And the whole thing in this here, I want to make it as easy as possible to remove at the car. So again, that might be some kind of quick release or just something, a couple of screws, something simple to drop out the car, because the whole lot is going to be connected on these 16-pin connectors and stuff like that, pretty much, where it can just be undone easy. And I don't want like more than one lot of looms going to the engine, so everything will be on these multi-plugs, bar the main battery cable will go to starter and the main ground which will go to starter. So it'll literally disconnect them, fuel pipes, and the coolant hoses, a few multi-plugs, and the engine comes out. Same within the car, this here, disconnect a few multi-plugs, this whole lot comes out. I want it to be simple, tidy, and not tied in together where you have to start cutting cables or all that kind of rubbish. So, want it simple, hence this. Now, I know it's not perfect, it could be a lot tidier, but it'll do. I wish I used some thicker steel, well, partly because I use actually aluminium, not steel, and I didn't have any more thicker aluminium than this, short of some like odd little bits and bobs. But I did have a load of thicker stainless. I've got a load more big stainless over there. But I just didn't want to drill stainless all the time. But probably didn't worth it. Oh well. She'll be right. She's down. It's solid. It's just slightly warped at the minute. But I might stick a few bars on that when I make the mounts for it to go in the car, which will strengthen it up a bit. So, what do I need to do now then? Where do I go next? Well, I think logically the next thing to do will be sort of work my way through power. So this here is a current ground stud I got here, where I have a main ground coming onto this stud, and then all the separate grounds off there run out to where we need to go to, like ECU. You know, pretty much it's going to be ECU relay grounds, coil driver grounds, and that's about it really. So main ground's in there. So I might as well start now power. Let's get all the power to the fuse box logically done. And then I guess I'm going to have to start pinning out cables on the ECU outwards, because I can't really work backwards to the ECU because it's going to be fiddly. So maybe if I put all the cables in the connectors, plug them into ECU and then dress them into suit. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just winging this. I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to start cracking with that for a few minutes, and we'll see where we end up. Progress is being made. Well, slow progress because it's taking its time. Obviously, crimping on every little pin here for all these is obviously a bit of a time-consuming process, in the right order. But what I've been doing is I've put all the pigtails now into ECU. So now I can dress them into where they got to go. Well, some of them are injectors there, so they just go into the loom. So some are long enough to go through to multi-plugs now. Some need to go through to their relevant fuses. I've put the ones into the ignition amplifiers here. So the reason I'm using these amplifiers is because the M113 uses what we call dumb coils. Now, dumb coil is something that has no electronics in it. It is literally just, you have a permanent 12 volt to it and you ground it out. So like an old traditional coil on an old car, a lot of like the 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder and that coil packs from like most of Fords most cars do from the 90s. Basically, most things up till coil on plug are dumb. Not all, but a lot of them are dumb. So these need like a high current connection, which the ECU can't always put out, or can't really put out high current on the ignition side of things. So what it does is we have a 5 volt signal that goes to this driver. This driver then, so when we get 5 volt coming in here on, let's say, cylinder 1, or pin 1 here, that then grounds pin number, the coil number 1, which in turn charges it. When the ground is released, that energy then goes to a spark plug and ignites the fuel. So we got 2 of these, because I've got 16 coil packs to feed. And what I want to do is I want to try and have it so that I have basically each one of these will run 8 coil packs. So I want both of these to run 8 cylinders each, because each cylinder's got 2 spark plugs. That way I've got some redundancy. So these will be working together in parallel, and I'll be doing this one here. Will be doing all the A coil plugs, so the first coil plug on each cylinder. This one will be doing all the B coil plugs, so the second spark plugs on each cylinder. That's the idea. So I have a bit of redundancy. So I now need to wire my pigtails from here back out to the 16-pin connector, and then I need to start really suss out where to go from there. It's still a lot to put in here, a lot to go in here yet, and it's going to get hopefully not too messy, but we'll see. I'll best just keep going then though. It's still going to take a while. It's been a while since I updated you guys on this. Did I do it this morning? I did it this morning. I don't know. It's been a long day. You can see the workbench. Well, not a day long. It's about 6 o'clock now. I started probably 10 o'clock this morning, but I did have to go for a haircut and all that during midday. It's basically done. The main board is there. I've just thermal pasted the drivers on. Fuses are in, ECU and what's in, everything's in, ready to go. Multi-plugs are on. So what we've got here is we've got 4 16-pin multi-plugs. One goes to the body, which has got things like the alternator exciter in it, the starter, relay, feed, wires that go to the clutch pedal, wires that go to the dashboard for other reasons, fuel level senders, all that kind of stuff. So all the stuff that goes really to a dashboard or to a car. Got one body loom plug, which is that one of these. We've got a sensor one, we've got a body loom one. This one here, so all 16 pins of this multi-pin plug here are coil packs. Every one of these cables is a coil pack, doubled up. So 2 coil packs come off of 1 channel per driver, and the drivers are fed off to 4 channels from the ECU. So I'm hoping I put all these pins in the right place, because there's only actually 4 ignition outputs here, but there's 16 pins. Obviously we'll know if I got it wrong, because I'll be trying to fire one cylinder at 2 different times, which could be interesting. So I'm hoping my brains the other night got that all correct, and that this matches the firing order. So that's done. And quite tidy. So far I'm pretty happy with these little 16-pin plugs off Amazon. They're doing alright. Oh, and then the 4-pin one here, that is for the fan. So we've got a feed to the fan there from the fan relay. The 2 little cables there, they are the ones that go to the fan switch that's going on the radiator, which gives me an option to use the fan switch on the radiator or the ECU, or what I'll be doing is I'll be using both, so that, you know, as a bit of redundancy, I've got two. Obviously, the switch on the radiator is a 87 to 92 degree switch, so it comes on at 92 degrees, goes off at 87. The ECU I can program to do whatever, whenever, so I can kind of manipulate that to work its best. So there we have it, on board. Still need to make the cover for this, obviously, but I'm going to move on to probably more exciting bits first. I did 3D print some bits, which you probably will see now, but I had a few issues. The printer has not been happy for a little while. I've been able to use it like once every few months, and she needs a bit of maintenance. So it clogged the nozzle, which is the first time it's clogged the nozzle in ages, towards the end of that print, so it's not complete, but that'll be going in the stainless cover. It's like a little bezel, and then below the bezel we've got all the fuse numbers that will go on there to indicate the fuses, which will be cool. Actually, it looks quite good on the bezel as well. We'll see. And then need to redo this one again because the printer messed it right up. But we got a little Speeduino in DIY EFI plaque to go on the ECU case as well. Why not? Speeduino is obviously what it's powered by, so credit to them. And James Brandon supplied all the kit. He actually supplied one of his ignition amplifiers for free. So thank you, James. But yeah, that's all that. So that was the one wiring job I was really dreading, because overall obviously it's a huge job, and that's the one that requires the most amount of brain power, because it's getting it all right off of all my sheets done up. From here on, the wiring gets a lot simpler. Obviously there's still a lot of wires. I've got a lot more to add, and I've got to alter the wiring going on there to add in for all the sensors and stuff I'm going to be using instead. But this is relatively straightforward. It was that end there, which is just there's so many cables, so much to do. So I can wire it now as it is here in the bay, but I don't think that's a good idea, because it's just a faff, and I've got to take the engine out anyway. So I think we'll put it up in the air a second. I'll pop the engine out, and we'll get the engine sitting on a pallet maybe, and we'll strap it down to pallet because I want to wire it on the pallet, and I want to turn it over and fire it up, if possible, at some point on that pallet. So that way I can sort of get everything dialed in, all the settings mostly right. You know, I've got a clear access to it, which would be nicer rather than in the car. It'd just be easier, I think. So let's crack on. See what else we can get done tonight. She's out the car again for the millionth time. Right, I'll just give you guys a bit of a rundown of what I plan to do, and then I'll probably just crack on time lapse it because it's not going to be the most interesting. And obviously, yeah. So this is cables. These have got to go somewhere. I think from memory that is what's left of what I need. Plus, I need to add what I'm missing still. So what we got? Obviously, we've got a 16 coils, like I talked about a million times already. These are dumb coils. One coil per side, essentially. Or, well, not quite, it's got two in there sandwiched somehow. But two coils, A and B, for the plugs each side. On here, we've got one live cable, or positive, sorry, and two grounds per coil pack. The positives all end up going back and joining, here we go, in this yellow and black here. So I'm going to have a positive feed per bank, so one bank each side. Just because it makes sense, that's how I've done it on the fusing. So we've got to wire the positive to that, and then each of these 16 grounds for the coils go back to that 16 pin connector I had with all 16 channels in it. So I've got to do that. Injectors, similar thing. We've got one 12 volt, it's got to be wired together, and that 12 volt will also feed the idle control valve, and then a separate ground per injector. It has to go back to the multi-plug. we're going to be using a standard Mercedes temperature sensor once I replaced it. That would help a lot. So I'm going to pop that one out and pop one in from the spare engine there. So we'll be reusing that because it's a 2-wire sensor, and I don't think it's a grounded sensor, so that will be more accurate again. Cam sensor, I'm going to connect it up, but I don't plan on using it because we only need that for sequential injection, and the Speeduino, the one I've got, can only do 4 channels, so it can't do sequential. I'm just going to wire it in now for the sake of it. Like, I've been future-proofing all this so far, hence why I've wired every coil back separate, every injector back. I'm wiring it up sort of for sequential, but it's going to be batch fire. But I didn't want to make a loom that was, I wanted to kind of future-proof it back as far as the ECU anyway. So we're going to wire that in. Up the front here as well, we've got a solenoid here, which does this actuator for the flaps in the intake manifold. Now, I know they change during the rev range, and they do something or other. They end up changing the torque and that in the pickup. I want to keep that. I don't know how I'm going to use it yet. I've wired from the VVT pin on the ECU, because it's technically, it's not variable valve timing, but it should operate in the same sort of way. So I'm going to try and wire it off that and just see what we can make happen. But that basically runs off a vacuum here on this actuator for a solenoid. So we'll pretty much rewire that up. If I can't use it, I'll just lock the flaps in a certain position and we'll be done with it. But it'd be kind of cool just to use it really as it's there. What else we got? The alternator's got 2 cables. The alternator. I've wired the alternator for a dumb alternator, but I haven't actually confirmed anything yet as to how the alternator is wired. So I'm hoping it's a dumb alternator. I should Google that in a minute really, because I've only wired for that. What else we got? Temperature sensor, yep. Be wiring my oil pressure sensor down to here, like I spoke about in the first wiring video. I need to drill that out, fit an adapter in. I've got the taps and such now to do that. So we'll be doing that. Bearing's a bit dry in there. Wiring wise, okay. Throttle body. Oh, this is different. Interesting. That throttle body looks like that a minute, sorry. And this one I got here, for some reason, says AMG on it. Oh, wow. And it is a bit different. Yeah. Oh, that's small. Why have I got an AMG throttle body? Odd. Right. Well, I would say that changes things, but for now, I think I'm just going to leave it as is. That is definitely bigger, though. Oh. I've checked the engine numbers on this one already, and the block certainly isn't an AMG block. It's only a 5-litre block. But I have, again, no history on this engine. This was the cheap one. But there's an AMG throttle body sitting there. We'll ignore that now, though. We're not interested in that. Oh yeah, that engine is not quite as clean as the one that's sitting there on the side. Oh well. We're using it for now. We'll blow it up and then we'll swap engines. So this is where it gets really complicated. Or I hope it doesn't, but it might well do. Electronic throttle. We're not using that because Speeduino don't support it, and they don't intend to support it because of the reliability. I'm not spending $3,000 on an ECU and dashboard setup that would support it. So my only option is to get rid of it and change it for a manual type throttle body. Obviously they don't exist for this engine, so I've got to make an adapter and change the throttle body full stop. Then it probably won't fit my intake setup. Or what I plan to do is take this apart and modify this so it can be cable driven with a TPS sensor. So I've got a throttle position sensor from a Mitsubishi Evo. I want to try transplant onto here, and I want to try and somehow rig up a cable actuator setup on the side here to drive it by cable. That's my intentions. We'll see if it's possible yet. Crank sensor, that's easy. That's just going back as it should do. Idle control valve is also going to fit in here somewhere. We'll be using, I don't know, we've got a few different ports here. We've got a one-way valve there for a vacuum takeoff at the moment, which you can reuse for vacuum, I guess. And we've got this one here, which used to be an EGR one, which is gone. I reckon we use that for the idle control valve, so that'll be fitting somewhere around here. Short of that, alternator wiring staying in place. We're not using any oil level sensors. That's about it. So overall quite simple. We've just got to add the wire in for the TPS, idle control valve, the vacuum actuator thingy, because I got rid of that I think, and the oil pressure sensor. Wire it back to here, put the multi-plugs on it, and then we are making, oh, and wire in a starter solenoid actuator. Which will be going down there. So I'm not going to bore you guys with any more of this at the moment. I'm just going to crack on. And I'm just going to make it electrically complete. Maybe? Well, I think the camera went dead, so I lost a bit of my progress there. Today is actually the next day, so I finished up here last night at about 20 to 11. But look what we've got here. We have got those 3 engine looms I'm talking about. So I'm over the moon. This one here, populated all 16 connectors. That is all 16 coil packs. Nice. This one here is the power feeds for the coil packs, the injectors, idle control valves, intake flaps, that kind of stuff. And then this one here, this here is our TPS sensor, crank sensor, cam sensor, temperature sensor, oil pressure sensor, all those sort of more sensitive bits and bobs really. So I've got 3 multi-plugs which will now marry up, hopefully, perfectly with the ECU, which would be really nice. Wiring wise, I've got my cables mostly in. So we've got a feed for starter down there. We've got over here, we've got our oil pressure. That's the coolant one there. Oil pressure one. I'm not actually going to be using the cam sensor at the minute, but it's there. Obviously our coil packs, injectors. This one here is for the idle control valve. This one here is for TPS, which needs to be wired still. And crank sensor right there. So really, really simple. So the last thing I've got to do is wire this TPS. Now that's going to be going hopefully somewhere around here, but I'm going to leave it along just in case. What I've bought is I've bought a 4-pin junior power timer, like amp and Tyco style connector here, but this one doesn't fit the plug. So TPS, I just took a random stab at the dark and bought an Evo one. Probably not the best one to buy in the end, but we're going to see if it works. The way it works is this one here's got a spring in it, so I can't, on a normal one, I would have been able to get away with using any sensor and putting it wherever I want to, because it wouldn't matter if it went clockwise or anti-clockwise, because I'd just configure it in the ECU software to work like that. Not a problem, correct? This one has a built-in spring. It auto returns it, and the spring is really tight. So I can't really have that fighting against the spring for the throttle body, because this will be trying to open it whilst the throttle body's trying to close. So ideally I need to fit this on the driver's side of the throttle body, where there isn't anything sticking out of it at the minute, which is a bit of a pain. And whatever shaft I make between the two has to be quite tough, because this needs, I was going to have just like a whatever shaft, because normally these don't need any kind of, these are just floating and you don't need anything strong to turn them. But this one annoyingly you do, and I can't take it apart. But we're going to try work with it, is what it is. So standard 3-wire 5-volt TPS sensor. Most 3-wire sensors are going to be all the same, 5 volts, simple. Problem is I don't know what does what. Now I could try Google it, but I can't be asked to do that either. So there's quite an easy way to test these, and you want to test it if you're not sure anyway, full stop. So you're going to need your sensor, a multimeter set on ohms. Now I'm hoping you guys can see that. We've got some crocodile clips put on our meter. Either side here. And just to test it's working, we can short them out and we should get a closed resistance reading. Yeah, 2.3 ohms, so bad connection, but we got a reading there, that's fine. Now, so you've got our 3 pins of our TPS sensor. One's going to be ground, one's 5 volt, and one's signal. The signal is usually like a 0 to 5 volt signal that goes back to ECU, or somewhere around that. But obviously if we put the cables in the wrong ones, we risk damaging ECU or damaging the sensor. So, first thing we'll do is we want to try find the 2 power pins. Now these are the 2 pins that when we connect up the cables and turn the sensor, the reading will barely change. Now I've already worked out what these are on this one, but I'll show you. I'm going to connect it to my 2 power pins, which are on the Evo one are the outer 2 pins. We get a reading of 4.5 thousand ohms, and then when we turn it, reading stays pretty consistent. So that's our 2 power ones, but we need to know what's ground and what's 5 volts. So if we now go and move one of the crocodile clips over to the remaining pin, which must be the sensor pin, we're either going to get a high reading or a low reading. The high reading will indicate that the power connection is on the positive. A low reading will indicate the power connection is on the ground. So here we got 4.7 thousand ohms, which is probably a high reading. So I move that now back over to the power connection, and then put the other pin on the signal one in the middle here. We've got 174 ohms, so that's our low reading. So that indicates that the right hand one here is ground, the middle is signal, left hand one is positive. So now if we turn this, as the throttle opens, the reading should get higher. Yep. Creeping up to about 4.8 thousand ohms. So that's it. That's all we need to do. So now we know it's on this one, it's 5 volts, signal, ground. Perfect. And there's probably a logical reason they've done that, because it wouldn't matter if you shorted out 5 volts and signal, because ECU would just think the throttle's in the wrong position. If you shorted out the signal and ground, that would then be a short circuit. So that could cause issues. So we know what we need to connect up now. Evo 1 has funny connections. Instead of having 4 little tabs to match up the 4-pin JPT connector, it's basically a 4-pin JPT, but the tabs are in a different place. You can buy this connector, but it's 10-15 quid for one connector, or you can buy the standard JPT fitment ones, 2 for about 8 quid. Of course, I bought the 2 for £8, and I ground off the tabs on the sensor. So, ground off top and bottom, it fits. But just, yeah, I just need to remember or put a marker on it to show that it goes that way up, not that way. So, I'm going to get that pinned up a second. And that's the power wires chucked in as well. It's temporarily rigged up to the starter and the engine, and a temporary power cable as well. So now I can put a ground on the engine, put it on a battery, jump a few connections on the body connector there. So I've got starter and ignition, and that's the wiring done. That's all pinned in done. Had a slight issue with the coolant temperature sensor here. Tried to replace it because it's broken. It broke more, wouldn't come out. Tried to take it out that engine there, broke, wouldn't come out. So I've done a temporary little bodge just so I can get a reading through, because you could do a coolant reading quite desperately, or at least a some kind of false reading to ECU, else the fueling is going to be a bit funny. So that's that now wired and ready to go. I've got a bit of a mess to tidy up in general. Obviously the ECU case isn't finished yet, and the loom isn't wrapped, but that's something I can do, you know, when it's all running. So that's going to be another episode. So I appreciate this one might not have been the most exciting episode. For me, in some ways, it was quite exciting. Mostly relief that I'm happy it's done now, although we don't know if it actually works. Yeah, I'm pretty happy how it turned out overall. A lot of work, and a lot more to do. So I think now, next episode, I'm going to be trying to get that throttle body sussed out, before we try to fire it up, or I'll get too excited and we'll just start working on firing it up, which I'd love to do now, but that's obviously a lot of work, because to fire it up I need to find top dead center, make a timing mark, put all the engine data into the ECU, configure all that. I got to set up a temporary fuel system to rig up, and you know, all that just to get it going. So that's probably going to be a video in itself. But yeah, if you are liking the progress on the M113 project and you're enjoying the build, then why not drop me a comment, tell me what you think. Tell me if I could do anything better. Yeah, any suggestions, I'm always open to it. Drop the video a like. Yeah, give me a comment. Subscribe for plenty more on this one. Obviously there's all the previous videos, all the videos when it was also a twin turbo Cosworth, and I've got all my other projects on there, the 20 valve turbo Golf, the L322 Range Rovers, the Turbo Technics Range Rover, just all sorts. Yeah, but thank you for watching. I hope I'll see you again next time. I've been Jordan. Cheers.